Hello, I'm Caroline Marshall, and welcome to Bump to Business Owner, the podcast speaking to mums in business, you. I'll be in conversation with some of the most inspiring women and mothers in enterprise about their journey, how they created their successful businesses alongside raising their children, and what that looks like in work and family life. Hello and welcome to today's episode of Bump to Business Owner. I am your host, Caroline Marshall, and today on our final episode of this series, I am talking to Mikaela Jones. Mikaela is a mother of two and founder of Pleasure Gap. Pleasure Gap is your BFF with all the insider goss on sex, sexual wellness, and self-care. They promise to bring you the very best pleasure toys from across the planet and all the tips and tricks to level up your self-pleasure game. Pleasure Gap's goal is to bring a crew of passionate experts from sexologists to psychologists to bring you all the need-to-know info. You're in super safe hands. And if this doesn't draw you in already, Mikaela talks about the gap. We've had the career gap, the finance and pension gap, health gap, and today I am sure we'll talk about the O gap. 95% of heterosexual men reported usually or always orgasming when sexually intimate, while 86% of lesbian women and only 65% of heterosexual women said the same. I, for one, am fascinated by Mikaela's career path from Homebase to sexual wellness. I'm so excited to talk to you. Hello, Mikaela.
Caroline, thank you for that intro. That was amazing.
I mean, you are amazing. I'm so I've definitely not had anyone with your kind of business on here, and I had to end the season with it. I was just saying off air.
I go out with a bang today.
Go out with a bang. Well, yeah, and actually, I was just kind of I really just want to end it with something different. And also, it's school holidays. I didn't want to end it with something that's like too focused on that. And no, I was talking to my
We want to give
podcast.
the mums some activities, don't we? Some homework for the summer holiday.
For them, not for the kids.
That's right, yeah.
That's it. And no, it makes perfect sense. I'm all about joy, self-care, and we did meditation at the end of our last before Christmas. And so this time we're ending on self-pleasure. So thank you so much for being the expert to talk about that.
Well, I love it. Thank you so much. No, thank you for having me.
So Mikaela, how have you gone? I think I saw in your background is some LinkedIn stalking. How did you go from like LinkedIn sorry, how did you go from Homebase to Pleasure Gap? What has happened here?
So, that is a great question. So my background is in buying. So since I started after uni, I went into buying. I started at Anthropology, who was
Oh,
like this
amazing.
amazing American brand, kind of sister company of Urban Outfitters, Free People. When I was buying like wear, nightwear, swimwear. So kind of started out there working on the women's wear team. When I started, I was commuting into London with that actually as well. But once I started to start thinking about kind of marriage and babies, and I was a bit like, I maybe need to be a bit closer to home. So at that point, my commute was like 2 hours each way. And the home base head office was super close to where we live here. So I was like, well, I'm buying women's wear. What's the difference if I'm buying wood care or decorating accessories as it was at the time, the job that I moved to? So for
Pond
me, like,
accessories.
that's it. Yeah, I just have such a love of buying, and I love that you can kind of curate these amazing ranges for like any audience and bring them different things and new trends. So I feel like it's all, it's all on a theme. So from women's wear, and then at home base, I've bought like paint, sheds, I don't know, landscaping. So all the different things. So when it was time to, I always knew I wanted to work for myself. So I guess when I was thinking of like the business idea and it kind of
Mm.
came to me, I was like, well, sure, right. If I can buy lawnmowers and hedge trimmers, why can't I buy vibrators? So that's
Yeah.
kind of,
You've already
but
shown you've got a
yeah,
diverse range of buying skills, and so
that's
it
it,
actually
right?
makes perfect sense. You are
Yeah,
sticking to what you know, just with all the other responsibilities of being a business owner, which
that's it. Yeah, exactly. But I was like, what's the difference? So all those skills are super transferable. I love working with suppliers and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it felt like a really natural fit, like when it all kind of entered my brain.
to be in Michaela's brain. And because that's an interesting question, because yeah, it was literally like 2 summers ago. I met these wonderful ladies at a networking event who had a sex subscription box, and they were saying, ironically from America, like this is one of the last areas of like wellness that kind of hasn't
Yeah.
hit the UK, and I don't think it still has yet. Clearly,
Yeah.
you will have the insights on that. But yeah, I just feel like that, meditation, breath work, all of this is hitting us. Saunas is a new one this summer,
Yeah,
apparently.
yeah.
But is that why you went into this, or have you always had a passion for things like the orgasm gap and pleasure for women?
Yeah, I think it's kind of, oh God, I felt there's so much to unpack here. It's like all of the above. But yeah, basically, I think you're right. I think as a country, we are still, there's quite a lot of shame, I think, in people's conversations, and we are still very British, like, oh, let's keep that under the bed in a box, hidden away. Whereas I think other countries are just a bit more liberal, especially if you look at like the Aussies, what they're doing. I feel like they are just, they're
Really
years
interesting.
ahead of us, which is funny because I think in other issues they seem behind, but like in that
Mm.
space, they're kind of super forward thinking. But you're right, absolutely. I always know I wanted to work for myself. So when I was trying to think of a business idea, that stage where you're a bit like, what is it I'm going to do? I know that like that kind of entrepreneurial life is calling my name. I was just thinking of all the things I love. And you're right, I'm so passionate about like women's health and like just everything pro women. And this just feels like an area of the market that's really underutilized. And then when I put that with my buying background, I felt like a lot of the brands out there, so all the big players, it still felt quite dated and seedy, and all the brands, they've kind of got like just women in lingerie, and it was all very. I was getting really annoyed actually because I felt like it was all very much done for the male gaze, and it all felt like women were expected to be very performancy. It didn't feel like we were necessarily doing it for us. It was more like we were doing it for other people. So taking those things together, the buying background, I was a bit like, there's some amazing brands out there, and they are doing great things. And just the super modern attitude towards sex and normalizing the conversation and just putting female centered pleasure first, which I think as a country in the world is not a narrative that we've really had. So I just wanted to get in on that, help the cause, try and bring together all of the best brands and products that I could find and curate them in a lovely space that also felt like accessible and fun because I think it still feels like it's still quite a hard area to there's a lot of yeah, like I said, there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of taboo. It's not necessarily the thing that you're all sat down having a chat around over dinner with your parents,
No,
about. So
I mean, I'd agree on that. And it's also interesting because I don't think until I was really like looking at your site and I'm like, oh wow, these things look beautiful kind of thing, that you realize how
yeah,
masculine the sex industry is. Like we know porn
definitely.
is, but
Yes.
I don't think I even realized like brands like Anne Summers because it's pink. You don't even
Yeah.
realize
Yeah.
actually how some like the toys and things are so masculine, like not
Yeah. Yeah.
pretty.
That's it. I feel like stuff has come such a long way. Like my mum actually does say this. She's like, she'll tell her friend, she's like, oh, it's not all, you know, big phallic shaped things anymore. Editing my language there. But you know
You're
what I
very
mean?
welcome to show some of your toys because I know you've brought them and are desperate.
Oh, thank you. Do you want some now? I
Just so
can,
as
yes.
we've got onto this subject already of how they don't look like that
Yes.
anymore.
I'm sorry. Yes. No, I know. I'm straight in there. I'm like, just love it. Well, I brought a few because what I was thinking for the listeners, and I can, I'll say the names of the products as I go, but I just get one of the things I feel really passionate about is the fact that this kind of the narrative in our culture is that sex is this, well, in a heterosexual couple is penis in vagina sex. And
Mm.
I just think that we need to kind of rethink this script and take a step back and just sex isn't just that aspect. Sex is everything. And so for me, especially when you hear stats like it's only 18% of vulva owners that can orgasm from penetration, but yet we all focus on we're building up to that big act of like
Mm.
penis in vagina sex. We've kind of got it all wrong a little bit. So we're kind of talking over 80% of women that can only orgasm from that external stimulation, clitoral stimulation. So with that in mind, that is the kind of a few toys that I want to show you. So my first one, and I know we'll probably get on to talking about mums and motherhood, but this one is my absolute favorite I recommend to any mum. So it's called The Whisperer by Smile Makers. And basically, it's called The Whisperer. You can see that. It's called The Whisperer
Beautiful.
because it's so quiet. If I can turn it on, put it near the camera. I don't know if you probably can't even hear it
No,
because
can't hear
it's
it.
so quiet, which I think in itself can sometimes, especially if you're a new mom, like, and you're, or any mom, or anyone just wants a little bit of peace and quiet, or you live with a flatmate. This one's so quiet, but it's designed for external use. So it's super squishy silicone. It's just, this one actually was designed with mum's net for new mums in mind. So
Really?
this,
That's so
yeah, just because
interesting.
yeah, it's lovely because they took so much feedback around obviously new mums if you're in that postpartum stage and maybe you know things have gone on down there, it's created life and it might not feel just it might be a bit sore, a bit tender. So this is designed to be super, super squishy and not intimidating, and it's just very quiet, like have a little bit of you time. So I always recommend these kind of toys to new mums just because it just focuses on that clitoral stimulation and just feeling great and allowing you that time to get back to yourself. And I suppose
That's
likewise,
I
two more, and
really
then I'll
wanted to touch on this, was that the
yeah,
new mum stage was the fact
yes,
that do you think there'd be so much if it was focusing, because pleasure is a part of this, of getting yourself
yeah.
back, feeling like you, but instead we're focusing on going to the doctors and the doctor asking if you want to go on the pill,
Oh my
basically,
God.
and if you're having
That
sex
6 week
again.
checkup, I feel like will haunt me for my life. I just when they're saying, so what's your plan for contraception at 6 weeks? And you're like, I literally said to the doctor,
No sex.
they're not having sex method. Yeah, it's because but yet they're continually asking people this, aren't they? Repeatedly. And
Mm,
I just think you're right. It's just how do we reframe that? Because I think there's ways that we can all still experience pleasure, and that can be by ourselves or with a partner, but it doesn't necessarily need to be that penetrative sex. We don't need
yeah.
to risk getting any babies, especially when the majority of vulva owners are feeling that pleasure on the outside anyway. And as yeah, I completely agree. That
I
check
still
is
it,
wild, isn't it?
Yeah, and I still feel it's like there's space to say, okay, you want to tell people that you can get pregnant right now. You want to tell people that, like, yeah, missed birth and
Yeah,
big, you can get
yeah,
pregnant. Breastfeeding doesn't
yeah.
stop
You're highly
that. So I get
fertile,
that
all of that. Yeah,
perspective, the education
yes,
piece, but there's a better
yeah.
way of doing it than
I
asking
know.
about contraception.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Or at least be like, would you like any? Do you need any? Not what contraception are you using? It's like
That's
it's
it.
very it assumes, doesn't it, that you're already back in the just think, I almost feel like these doctors are just it's horrendous. I'm like, stop. You just
Yeah,
don't
I
put
know.
ideas in anyone's head.
Have you outside being like, have you thought about pleasure instead?
Yeah, you're no, you're so right. Because it does just put that expectation, I think, onto the new mother. And I think at that point, you've got so much going on in your mind and your world, especially if you're a first time parent, like your everything has been flipped upside down. And I don't
Yeah.
think the last thing that you're thinking about, I mean, there's some amazing talks by Dr. Karen Gurney, who's the sex doctor, and I'm obsessed with her. But she talks about these conditions for good sex, and she talks about this psychological arousal, physical touch, but also you need to like have the headspace and like
Mhm.
that
I think
capacity.
especially women, like, and not it is like
Yes.
a that I've read a great book. I can't even remember what it's called. It's something like The Gap or something like that. And it's a great,
Yeah.
have you read it? It's a great book.
I don't
And
know which one it is.
but it
Yeah,
is
maybe.
basically talking about the orgasm gap basically and
Yeah.
what the other conditions for good sex are.
Yes. Because I think like, especially as women, and not to like stereotype, but maybe with the new moms, there's so much on your mind. You're not probably sleeping properly, with the new baby. It's
The
you
stats
just
on
kind of
birth
losing
trauma
that.
alone, that's gonna be
Yeah, you
like
lost the
your head isn't gonna be in a good space for a while after trauma.
no,
Mm.
absolutely not. Yeah, it's definitely in the like let's get straight back to it, like as if we're on our honeymoon. It's absolutely not the
Yeah.
case.
So, Michaela, you're a fairly new business owner. You launched August in this space
Yeah,
anyway. And obviously
yeah,
now it's your job to talk about sex all the time. Have you always been okay and self-pleasure, more to the point, because I know that's also the
yeah,
focus of your business.
yeah,
Have you always just naturally been this person who's been so interested in and just happy to talk about it and raised in that sort of family? You talked about your mum there. So obviously you and your
yeah.
mum talk
I
about it.
I do think probably yeah, probably. I more feel like I'm always quite open. I don't feel like I get embarrassed easily. I probably, my husband is probably like, I wish you would shut up a little bit more. I don't know, but yeah, I do feel like it's quite. I've always been quite an open person, but I think especially now, the more I learn, the more I just feel like it's just so important because I just feel like, you know, I have so many friends and meet so many people that talk to me about like, oh, I'm just not feeling in the mood and all this, and I feel like there's so much pressure on the women that I just kind of want to help like educate and alleviate any of those problems as much as I can, because
Yeah.
I just think people are expected to just be in the mood, and that is not the reality, which is where I think the toys can be seen as like a tool for that and for almost like even as a bit of a warm-up act. Because I know sometimes partners, especially male partners, can sometimes feel intimidated. I think I get that from a lot of men that I speak to. They don't necessarily they kind of want to shy away from the toys because they don't want to be like replaced, which it's just crazy. And like I was saying with that toy earlier, or some of these that are more like these all over like vulva, they're just a completely different shape. They're doing a completely different job. And really, I just think it's important that everyone's feeling great pleasure. And I think for so long and historically, men have been experiencing this like pleasure, but really women, and to a point, I know it's different now in our generation, for our parents' generation, but it's almost like you're just kind of going with the motions, and the sex isn't necessarily designed for what feels great to people with vulvas.
And it also kind of sounds like said with the masculine of you know, vibrators and things, it's not even served the
Mm.
men well. Like with all these things, you actually find out actually the men don't like have been intimidated by them as well, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
I
So
think so. I think so, definitely. Yeah. And I think that I always say to people, I'm like, don't worry, like give it a go. Because I just think that sex and any sex act should be kind of like messy and fun and a bit clunky. And that's all kind of part of the joy of it in a way. It doesn't need to be like this perfect
that's
sex
probably where
scene out
like
of Bridgerton or
film,
whatever.
yeah. We've all been watching Bridgerton. You have a lot of Bridgerton on your profile right now, so I've got to delve
I
into
love it.
that. Do you love
100%.
Bridgerton?
I'm a big
And but
fan.
I think that's it. It is we're also being served, and it is like with anything, nothing is real life. Like the other day, I run a virtual assistant agency, and I literally had someone the other day. I was like, I want someone like Louise from Sex and the City, and I think that shows in all areas of life we get fed these images, and I was like, that's not a real PA. I was like, you know, it's like someone going to a dating agency being like, I want, you know, Aiden from Sex and the City. I'm like, that's not real.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Is there a slight generational difference? I really hate saying that because I feel I'm still really young. But
Yeah. We are
that
young,
one's
Caroline.
younger,
Don't worry, we
10
look great.
years younger. I'm gonna put you in the same age bracket as I say gap, have the gap on the brain. Age area as me. Like, do you think things are changing? Because all you hear is negatives of that, like because online porn sounds like, you know, with social media, things are
Mm,
quite bad in it
yeah.
sounds like it. I feel like I'm completely not, you know, my kids are still far too little to be involved in.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And do you know what? It's funny you say that because I feel like that's another one of the reasons why when I was kind of creating the business idea that I feel so strongly about it because I'm like our kids and that generation. Also, like my niece is 15, and I just think like there's
Okay.
all this stuff that people are consuming online that is kind of putting out there this narrative because sex is happening like behind closed doors. You don't really see like it in its natural environment. You're seeing a very curated, like media-led version. And porn is obviously entertainment, but I feel like kids don't know that. And that
Mm.
does worry me that I think that there's stuff like all this super aggressive porn out there, and then you've got teenage boys thinking that's how, that's how to behave, and that's what great
Yeah.
sex is. So again, it's all part of that kind of feeds into another reason of why I wanted to um, you know, create this business. But I do think that the attitudes hopefully are changing. I think it's obviously much more accessible for them to consume, but with that also comes more accessible knowledge. And I think that they're going to know so much more than we ever did. Like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know about you, but I feel like sex ed at school is awful. It's basically like, here's how you make a baby. The like body parts aren't even labeled correctly. Like, so my little boy is 6, he's nearly 7, and they're doing like the PSHE,
Yes,
you know what I
PSHE.
mean? Yeah. Um, there's some sex ed in there, but it's obviously very low level. It's kind of like body parts. So they're all laughing because someone said nipples in class. But just I'm like up in arms, like, are we calling it a vulva? Because it's not a vagina. And like I think that even that, I just think that has taken years really. And there's still people, like even in the press, like reporting it incorrectly. And I just think even that, like having that awareness. So hopefully this younger generation that comes through will have much better knowledge than we did, and they can continue to change it. And I think that we're probably more liberal parents to talk about it than our parents were, and that will continue, I think, hopefully,
I hope
like
so, because
past
I
them.
honestly feel like it's half and half. I have a real strong bunch of friends and it's vulva vagina, and then I
Yeah.
have others, I just don't know them so well, but you know, they'll be like, oh, my child asked me where it came from, like so, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I just say the vagina.
Yeah.
You know, and I know
Yeah,
also my
exactly.
anatomy isn't always correct. That's why I get worried, is that I'm actually teaching them the wrong thing, but I'm like, at least they're trying.
I do. I think I'm gonna have to be careful with my kids because obviously I think at the moment it's still very like, oh, it's just mummy's shop. Like we don't really get into the ins and outs of
Yes,
what's
yes.
in the packages. And I think there's gonna come a time which is gonna be interesting. But I think like having that open communication is really important, obviously at
Mm.
age appropriate times. But I just
Exactly.
think as well, that's the great thing about masturbation, because I think in school, when we're teaching kids about sex, really the focus to me should be more on self-pleasure and masturbation, because it's like the safest form of sex. You also then know what feels great for you, so you can then advocate for yourself and for your body when it does come for a time when you want to have a
Not
partner
feeling
there with
right.
you. Because I don't know about you, again, that's probably another, I've got a whole list of reasons why this business, I think when it clicked, that's what I mean, it all like all the dots joined. But I just think like you go through probably years of having fairly average sex in your like teens, early 20s, in late 20s even. But I just think you don't, I feel like if I'd had more of these tools available to me, I'd have been able to advocate for myself so much more. So I think like I
Oh, you
kind of
hear it
want to
all
be able
the
to pass it on to
time.
other people.
You just need to have a glass of wine with your girlfriends and talk about what you're like in your early 20s or
Yeah,
late teens, and you're just like, oh God.
absolutely. But even longer, I think. So like I don't know who else I was talking to the other day, but they were saying they've been out for lunch with another group of girlfriends, and I think like some people were saying they hadn't even had orgasms with their like long-term partners into their 30s, which is so common because I do think sometimes the poor partners just think, oh, well, this is how we do it, stick it in and she's gonna love it, but it's not like no one because no one's talking about it. And that's what they're seeing in the media and porn. Everyone thinks that is the way, but
Well,
yeah, that's why it's
everyone
so
would be
important to get the wine
happier
out. That's
if
what I
we
think.
talked
Get the
about
wine out.
but also like the benefits of release and sexual pleasure. Like
Oh
let's,
my
you know,
God.
it goes beyond just it being fun.
Absolutely. Like it's endless. Like not only just from like your kind of health and all that lovely like oxytocin, it's like energy. I also think one of the most amazing benefits is I think it's just actually so good for your like own self-esteem, which then kind of just radiates through the whole rest of your life. So it can help you get amazing sleep. It's gonna make you're gonna be glowing from within, your skin's gonna look beautiful. I just think all the time, ladies, you
This
need
is why
anyone there with
Michaela
you.
looks
Just be
so great,
yourself.
everyone. Just fine. And on the subject of the internet, because I do wonder this, because obviously I follow, you know, even just women who are doulas and things, and so putting pictures of breastfeeding women up there or
Mhm.
births, and so
Yeah.
and they're censored online. Do you get censored online a lot?
Oh, Caroline, I can't even. Like, I do actually. I try and like stay so positive with it, but I think like pretty like all business owners, you have days where I just feel like I want to throw my laptop at the wall because I just and for no reason sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. I do try and follow all the rules. I try and like censor the words. I'm trying to not post anything too graphic. But yeah, basically every time I go onto Instagram, I feel like posts have been flagged that I have to take down, and it's just so sad
Really?
because it gets
So
so
people are
disheartening.
proactively flagging your posts?
Yeah, and I stopped using hashtags because I was working with a business coach who said, oh, maybe, like the haters, quote unquote, would search for specific hashtags like hashtag pleasure. And
Yeah.
if
Oh,
you know
yeah.
that's
Let's get rid
against
of pressure. Anyone?
yeah, basically no. We want no one to have any of this. I'm gonna report you to Instagram. But honestly, like I think just even last week, my bio was flagged and I'd already edited it. It basically pretty much just said stop now, discreet postage. And I thought it must be the word discreet. So then took that out. But it's like the rules change and I wonder, I don't know. There's probably an element of the algorithm, there's an element of people reporting it. And then I think when it gets reviewed at Instagram, I'm guessing, depending who that is, if that's a machine or a person,
Oh, that's the
depends
worrying
what
thing. If
outcome
it's a
you get.
machine, then
Yeah.
they're just like, meh, yeah,
That's
mental
it.
sex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I basically just decided it's not every time I've tried to challenge the like what's it called the like shadow ban and the
Mm.
challenge the posts that have been flagged, it escalates worse and then they go through and flag a load more. So I've had to just take the stance where I just take it down, which is so disheartening because especially when we're trying to do good, but there's some amazing brands out there doing really interesting things to test this. So I remember this picture of this like gorgeous girl and she was like holding a vibrator, holding some flowers. She was in underwear, but like not, it's nothing to than you'd see like a girl in a bikini or anything. There's nothing really graphic about it, lovely image. But this other brand that I was following did a really interesting test where they kind of put two different images of the same vibrator in them. One was like a vibrator on a nightstand with some lovely flowers, like a really kind of pretty image, like we'd all be like, yeah, love, cute, right? And then there's one of this like, I guess really super manly bloke holding it with like muscles and like, yeah, like protein powder, like, but in a really kind of almost like a heavy metal rock star, super, super traditionally manly, and with the same product, and that wasn't flagged. Whereas all the kind of pretty female-led stuff, so it's just so
Wonder
stressful.
why the gap
Basically,
exists. It just
yeah,
shows how
it's awful.
that's
Yeah.
yeah.
But the main difference, I think, how they clarify, like quantify it, is so with men. So, example, you can advertise erectile dysfunction medication on Meta because that's medical, but like me and you having great orgasms is it's not. It's like that's not allowed because
Well,
it's
neither's
not obviously.
childbirth isn't allowed either, kind of thing. And that's not even
Well,
like
yeah,
that's literally
exactly.
that's
The
what's
world is just skewed, isn't it? We've got work to do for sure. There's some amazing people campaigning for it, and I try and do all I can to help. But
mm.
I feel like it's so
To go on
tricky.
the
I mean, I've
positive.
even not
There's
been able.
work
Yeah,
being done, and talking about it
definitely.
is part of it, but it is so
Absolutely.
frustrating
Yeah.
for you as
And
well.
I will like shout from the rooftops and tell anyone that will listen. So I'm happy to support any of those causes. And even I feel like even bank accounts, like I couldn't get a business bank account at the start because it treats because of the what I'm selling, it puts it in the like sex, porn, gambling section. So it is a
That's
bit like
crazy. So
isn't that
it's like
crazy? I know. You're like
that
it's
is crazy.
2024. Come on.
That I'm really struggling with that because this is it's like we have all spectrum of businesses on here, and like what they say.
Yeah,
So I had the founder of it comes to my a founder of Flower Box on here,
yeah,
amazing business, and she was like would go to investors and they're like, oh, you want to sell flowers? That's cute, and she was like, it's a billion like worth this industry. It's not
yeah,
cute. This is a business, and
yeah,
it's the same for
yeah,
you. It's like
yeah,
you are fulfilling a need for something, and it's like
yeah.
and also trying to change the world, like provide education and make it
No, yeah. It's
um
just so important. Like you said before, like masturbation's got so many great benefits. So like, why aren't we leaning into this more? It's going to help everyone's like mental health. We're all going to feel better. We're also like, I don't know about you, but I feel like again, like when I was in this place, like especially post babies, and you feel like you should be getting more like intimate with your partner, but you're just like, oh, I just really am not feeling in the zone. And then you're like beating yourself up and kind of on this like downward spiral of then every time you feel like sex might be on the cards, either the pressure's there or you're like making excuses and like, oh no, I've got a headache or I've got to go out or whatever. Because it
feeling
does,
touched
doesn't it? It
out
like,
like you're
yeah,
yeah it's I
absolutely.
think it's so hard in those early years, and whenever I've listened to podcasts with sex experts on it, they
Hmm.
say, there's all those statistics of like when you're a couple and I don't know, something like I think I read one, it was like if you haven't had sex in a year, but then they all have a caveat: if you're in the early years, maybe just ignore me.
Yes. It's absolutely. And I think there's an amazing stat about, I think people with children under 5 have got the lowest sexual satisfaction of anyone, which because
Really
like back
interesting.
to,
Well,
yeah, and
not
back to the
surprising, but
no, that's because back to them conditions for good sex. I think even if you're in a space where you have that psychological arousal, you've got a bit of physical touch with a partner, you're having a nice little cuddle, you're still thinking, oh God, are the kids asleep? Are they going to come through? I've got to do the washing. Like, have I organized the PE kit? It's sports day. All the stuff that's going on there, all that fun
yeah, and
stuff.
you're just new to all of that as well. I feel like in
Hmm.
the early years, this is
Yeah,
like a big thing for me because like we spoke before, and your children are just a year older than mine, and for me,
yeah,
I felt a huge shift with and all sense of the world with like 3.5 and 5 because but I think that's what's the shock. It's the hormones, partly that, and for
yeah,
women, for the birth
yeah.
people, but it's also that whole thing of like, okay, my life has just changed. Like, what's that word now?
Mm.
Matrisance? Yeah, it's a word of becoming a mother, basically. And it's
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah. Because that's it. You're not
yeah.
just having a baby, are you? It's like the mother is born. So yeah.
Mm, yeah. And then with that, it's like I think that's again that focus on pleasure as well, of like, what do
Mm.
I like doing? Because
Yes.
we talk about people who are stylists and say like,
Mm.
oh, it's important to get your style back or know what your style is, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so hard because like you're right, you are a different person. Your body's been through a lot, and then so to kind of go through that same probably set menu of like, oh, we do this and then we do this and then it ends in, D&V sex, like yeah. It's hard. I think it's like we all need to I think that's the number one thing really that can help in this again, sorry, is why I'm feeling so passionate about the
No,
education side. Because
bring
also
all the
for like
passion.
partners, because I just think that if we all could take that pressure off, and you know, every time that like I know that when my husband used to give me a kiss, I'd be like, oh great, now he wants sex. Whereas if I was like, oh actually, you know, he's kissing me, but I can just get him to give me a massage and then I can go to sleep. Like I'm so in for that. But all that is still so intimate, and it's like addressing those human needs we all have, but it's not that it doesn't have to go to the like, you know, the straight traditional
Mm.
end game. It's like you can kind of there's other ways to feel pleasure and explore touch and be intimate together that doesn't you don't have to feel like you're like, oh no, but I don't want to do that right now.
But then also, and it's about women initiating the touch as well, kind of thing, because
Yeah,
you can see
definitely.
why you'd
Yeah.
avoid that if you're like, oh, this is what has to happen every time. But whereas women will start to be like, oh, because that's important for the men as well, our partners in our
Yeah.
lives, if we're whoever,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
There's amazing stats about like kissing. I think that's one of the things that drops off in like a long-term relationship. So
Oh, interesting.
I think, yeah, I feel like I saw like
I'm here
I'm
for all
gonna say
the
Paul C.
stats.
Brogson. I know he was talking about kissing, and I think he said the average married couple is kissing for like half a second a week or something. It was under a second, basically, because we're basically like, you know, you're having a little peck and then you're off out the door. And there's other I don't know if you've heard of the Gottman Institute, but again, they do amazing research, but they talk about a 6 second kiss and basically how that can be a game changer because it like it gives you a bit of time. I don't know, like you're getting more in the zone. So trying to rather than just have that quick peck, even like that 6 seconds can dramatically change things. Like it kind of gives you a bit more chance to be in your body and like really feel into the kiss, which then even you might be both shooting off to work, but at least when you're coming back together later, that's more likely to play on your mind, I suppose, than a little kiss, which then it's a bit more of a gateway, I suppose, to like other stuff happening later.
And actually what comes to mind as well, because I see it a lot on even on Instagram stuff, and everyone can relate to this at some point in especially in the early years, it's like you've fallen into flatmate zone and things like
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Whereas you
Yeah.
don't 6 second kiss your flatmate unless you're getting with them
No. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
friends. So I think that's you can see it starts establishing that you guys as a couple are different
Yeah.
to your other relationships. So
Yeah.
that makes
Definitely.
psychologically complete sense to me as well.
Absolutely. Because I think it's the hardest thing to keep going. And I think that we should, again, we see it in films like people just, they look at each other and they want to jump on each other. That's not the reality. And especially in a long-term
After
relationship.
20
But I think,
years, that's not
yes, no. But like, I feel like society will have us all believing, like men, women, whoever, whatever combination, will have us all believing that we should be looking at our partner and wanting to like pounce on them. When the
Mm.
reality is that that is really unrealistically not going to happen. You kind of need those other things we talked about earlier. Like you need to be in the right headspace. You need to kind of have a bit of that physical touch. And that always doesn't have to be like jumping straight to it. It can just be like a nice cuddle and, you know, just taking things easy, the 6 second kiss. And you need that psychological arousal, but having those longer kissing and other moments like that gives you the chance to build it up because the desire isn't just gonna it's not just going to spring on you. You kind of have to put in the little bits of effort, but it
Yeah.
doesn't need to. Yeah, I think we all worry that it's oh God, I don't feel aroused. Why? Something's wrong with me. I'm broken. I think especially like when you've gone from pre-kids to post-kids, I think that's a big shift because you just don't have any time on your hands. So I think we really need to help mothers in particular, but everyone really understand that. I think
Yeah,
it's
and
so
I think
important.
that just comes to mind, even like looking at your website together, because it's like it's conversations
Yeah.
something. And you know why this came to mind? Because obviously I was on your website. And can I tell you what happens? This is the strangest thing.
Yes, do. Oh my God,
It
love this.
actually kind of weirded me out because this is actually a tech thing that happens. Well, so I was on your website and I was looking at like thing for penis owners as well. And then
Yeah.
on my phone, do you know the app Bubble?
Yeah.
It came up and said, "Do you need a date night?" I'm not even joking. How
That
weird
is
is that?
so weird.
That is the
What
stuff that like freaks me out. I was
is
like,
yeah. I'm like, what is the science behind that? Oh
yeah,
my God.
I know. I went,
You're like, oh
yeah,
God,
no,
I
I
feel
was
so
like, what are
seen.
the
Yeah, always.
odds? I'm on this website and then Bubble's telling me to get a babysitter.
That's what you need, Caroline. I'll send you some bits and then you get babysitter and have a great time.
Between bubble and pleasure gap, they're sorted.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, I love that. Isn't it creepy though?
We need
It does weird
there's
me
a
out,
future
stuff like that.
collaboration. If that happens, you can thank me.
I will, yes, all credit to you. I love that. But it's good. It's nice to look at the penis owner stuff too, because I think the men are quite an actually underserved market. Like when I first started the business, I was like, I am pro women. I am only making everything for us, to feel great. And it's one of my suppliers actually. He was like, I just feel like, people with penises are really like overlooked in this market. And I'm like, I think they're
I
doing
feel
okay
like
for
we need to
themselves.
help men be more successful.
Yeah, they're doing all right, but okay. But
Yeah,
I have
I
given
guess
in.
it
So I think
helps with the intimidation piece, and but also
mhm,
it is. I mean, I went to this event last year with Albright a Female Members Club, and there was a
yeah,
big thing about we need to have men in the conversations
the
about why we're
space.
struggling
Right.
in the workplace
Yeah,
and at home, and what can men do in the home, what can they do to feel more
absolutely.
helpful. So I guess I get it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so important because it is an education piece for them too. And I know that like obviously communication is so important in a relationship, but I still think it's so hard. Like even in a long-term relationship,
mm,
I just think that sometimes it's difficult, isn't it, to get all that information out there. So yeah,
yeah,
still
I
work to be done still.
you just need to talk to your friends, and everyone's just on a different spectrum with what they'll
Hmm.
talk about. Or no, you never know. Some people are so open with their partners and then not with their friends at all, and that's great.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's again, it's that behind closed doors thing that we're kind of dealing with. Kind of,
Yeah.
I've got
But honestly, I do think like if we get people talking, get your mates talking over a glass of wine, and I think we're all kind of experiencing the same things, especially if you're in that similar phase of life, like you've got kids or you're a business owner, you've got like life stresses are kind of always happening. I think that like intimacy and sex is always going to really like respond to that because naturally because your body's responding to it, so there's going to be like great seasons and there's going to be rough seasons, and I think that like the more we can normalize that and support our friends through it, it doesn't it, and I mean my answer to everything is like let's just throw a vibrator at the problem, guys. You don't need else, you only need yourself. Like if you're happy it's fine. I also think with vulva owners, like if we're kind of keeping ourselves at that level, it's easier to be more responsive to anything else that maybe could come along with a partner, any other opportunities. I think like because you're feeling great, you're in your body, like I said, all those amazing benefits from before, you kind of got this little self-esteem boost, you're feeling good about yourself. And I don't know if you've ever found this in the past, but like if there's been a period where you haven't had sex for a long time, which I know like post kids, both of mine, my gap was massive. Like I'd say like 10 months for one and a year for the
oh
other, maybe.
wow,
Like I was really like, I am not ready to go there. And I was quite strong with it. And,
that's really
luckily my part,
interesting to know, and I think will be so reassuring. But
yeah,
yeah, my gap.
that's what I can't no, back to
But
your 6 week question earlier, because I just think it is wild. Like I think,
yeah.
you know, old stuff has happened, hasn't there? Life has
And
potentially
that's
come
it.
out of there,
I
depending on how
think
your birth was.
when you listen to people saying, "Oh, well, if you haven't had sex in a year, you're going to break up," kind of thing, and then it's something so important with these educators to be like, unless you're
Yeah,
in this
yeah,
stage of life, because it's
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And again, and like there's other, like I said before, there's other stuff you can do together. So that can just be like having a nice cuddle in bed. It's like creating that time, massaging each other, but without there doesn't always have to be the expectation that it's going to lead to more.
yeah,
Like it can be,
yeah,
it's yeah, it's just it's reframing the narrative of what the view of sex is, I think, isn't it? Because it's really easy to think, oh, it's not sex unless, this act has happened. But really, everything else is as valid. So it's just about creating this little intimate moments.
yeah. And I guess it's down to a piece of identity as well. And I think that's
Mm.
another bigger shift we go through as mothers is like a
Yeah,
like suddenly everything. There's so many beliefs you have. There's like even like I don't know, extreme ones, like beliefs I had, and then I was suddenly on like my second child was very sick and I was on a NICU ward and it just questioned loads of beliefs I have. And it can be really extreme. And so then you have to like piece together, okay, what do I believe? What do I want to do with
yeah,
my life? So career's a part of that. But how do I feel
yeah.
about myself? What's my body going to be now? Is it going to kind of,
Hmm.
how am I going to feel comfortable? And it's part of that. I guess it's about sexual identity as well. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
boy as well.
definitely. Because I do feel, I don't know about you, but I just felt like I completely like lost my way with all of it. And again, that was another factor that played into launching the business because I just felt like I'd completely, as like I didn't almost recognize myself in that space. I was completely different to what I would have been like before. So like how do I don't want to be back there. I'm not saying that, but how do you get a resemblance of that back? So it's like a nice happy balance that fits with your current life and with your partner and everything you've got going
Yeah,
on.
because I want to ask you on that, because just about your transition to motherhood, like, you
Mm,
said some key things there. You lost your identity,
yeah.
you didn't have sex
Yeah.
time, you didn't feel ready to, which, so great to share. So, how was it a real shock for you? Was it at pregnancy? I always think there's a real shock for women because I was speaking to one of my friends who's pregnant now. And she's like, I wish it just wasn't like I was one of those women who could just get on with it. And I voice noted her back, being like, trust me, I've watched so many women now have kids because I was one of the first. If it doesn't hit them in pregnancy and they're one of those pregnancy unicorns, it hits them at some point.
Mine. I feel like pregnancies weren't horrendous. I had quite a lot of like sickness with both of them.
God, yeah.
And that was okay. But the shocker for me was just the like going home with the baby. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm such a planner. Like I was very much like I had birth plans A, B, C, D, and E, and I'm not even joking you. None of them contained any drugs, of which I ended up having at the birth. So
What, none of
hilarious.
those 5 ones had drugs in them? That's interesting. I really
By
want
the end, I'm like, I
to.
don't care what you give me, just do whatever. Hit me with it.
Was the first plan you
But
sneezed it out? That was my first plan.
say that again,
Was the
sorry.
first plan you would just sneeze your baby out? And that was mine.
Oh yeah, basically. Yeah. No, I really wanted a home birth actually. So I was very much like, I'm just gonna breathe the baby out in my living room. It's gonna be great. But I went too far over. So mine were Wilf was 16 days over and Pandora was 17 days over. So
Oh,
when it got to that point, they're a bit like,
16.
oh, you kind of need to be in. And so it
Oh,
was all I was induced
that's
with
a
both of
long
them. It's
time.
fine.
I was 10
Yeah. I
days over with my first, and I was like, I was the happiest laboring person you ever saw because I was just so happy it happened. So respect to you going to.
get this baby out of me. Well, that's what's funny though, because I think that I never got to that point. You know, where you hear mothers saying like, "Oh, I was just like, I'm done." I feel like I never was like that. So I think
Your
back in
babies were
like
just happier.
Victorian times, I don't know. I either would have been like, I think I would have been like a 44, 45 weeker. You know, like if they just left me to it. I think because if 40 weeks is the average, right? There's got to be some people are massively early, some people have got it massively over. I'm not sure though. I mean, I don't know if they would have come out by the
Yeah.
themselves, but it was
Did
all
you
good
know
anyway.
what
But
you were and your mum? Because I found this a thing. Because everyone was like, "Where's your baby? Where's your baby?" And then it like speaking to my mum, seeing my cousin has now had a baby. None of us gave birth like before 40 weeks.
no, no, yeah, my mum was the same. I think my mum said to me that the midwife had, or the doctor had told her that basically this baby would never have come out if she like hadn't have had some kind of interference. So I guess we've got to be thankful for it in a way, haven't they? Although,
Yeah.
side note, I don't really like how much they interfere, but it's one for another podcast for probably a different expert. But I do think that you spend your whole time planning, like I said, the birth plans. You go to all the like classes. What's it called? You know what I mean? The
NCT.
you le That's it.
Mhm.
Learning how to do stuff, and then you get home and you're like, what is going on? Like my with Wilf, my first one. So the feeding was a nightmare, but luckily we live in Bedfordshire and they've got the most amazing, they call them like baby brasseries, which is basically like breastfeeding clinics you can go to every day. It's completely free. Have all these amazing women. So I just turn up crying every morning, like, help me. Anyway, with
Oh,
him, it turned
that's
out he had a tongue tie. So once
amazing.
that was fixed, it was easier. It was slightly easier. But yeah, I just think it was that exhaustion. And like I remember people saying that babies, they never sleep and they feed all the time. And like, I think there was a day I had this app where I used to track what boob I was feeding him on.
Yeah.
And there's a day where he'd been like on my boob, probably not actually on it now in hindsight, must have been asleep, but like boob in mouth for like 17 hours. And when I showed the midwife, she was like, something is wrong. And that's when they were like, oh, he's got a
Wow.
tongue tie. So yeah, it was wild. But no, loved it. I think it's not easy, is it? But it's like obviously it's rewarding. We are where we are. I've got to say, I feel like mine are now 6 and 4. They're nearly about to turn 7 and 5, and I finally feel like I'm coming out the woods. And I feel like I'm the kind of parent that is could be better at this stage. I'm not so sure I'm like a baby kind of. good
No,
at the baby stuff.
no, I yeah, relate to that. I think the hormones just really like screw me over kind of thing.
Mm.
And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
when they start to clear, I'm like, oh, I'm myself again.
She's coming back. She's back,
Going
guys. Look
back.
out.
I think I just really thought because I didn't like struggle, but mentally did struggle in my first pregnancy. I think
Hmm.
with the hormones and everything, I think I just thought once it's out, I'll be fine.
Yeah. It's done then. It's
And
fine. Life will be
I
easy.
was, but a bit different, and it took a bit longer, kind of thing. Oh
Oh,
no,
bless you.
and you carried on working and career wise,
Yeah, that was fine. There was a little, oh no, I probably shouldn't say that actually. I was going to say that. I think because pre-COVID it was my first one. So I wanted to come back and do 4 days a week. And at the time that was like unheard of.
Yeah.
So I did, I feel like some discrimination, that sounds bad, but like it was like you have to drop down a level. I mean, they paid me the same and everything. So it was like a pride thing, but that's kind of made it more annoying. Because when you've worked hard to get to a certain point. But I think now if that was me, like,
You wouldn't put
I
up with
just
that.
feel like as a new mother, you're in such a it's like a whirlwind, isn't it? And actually
It's
at the
so
time I was just
vulnerable. I think new
grateful to be able
mothers
to,
are so
yeah.
vulnerable, and because they walk around just pretending they're not, I mean, some do, great respect to them, but you do just
Yeah.
like, there's that whole, oh, they're storming around with a buggy, and I'm like, they're probably trying to get it to sleep. Um,
Hmm.
like they're literally blind to anything other than just storming
Yeah.
around because they're half asleep themselves. And I was like,
Yeah.
things like this. I'm like, come on, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. It's so hard, isn't it? And it's such, you do feel like that judgment from lots of different angles. But I think like that's what I think other moms and stuff that you meet are just amazing because I think that everyone like understands, don't they? And it's like lovely little group that you can pull together and
Yeah.
look
Or
after
at
each
least,
other.
and even if you can't immediately, like once you start going out, and we're like, wow, that was like an experience, wasn't it?
Yeah. Have you seen that WhatsApp advert that's on telly at the minute where the
No.
mum's like talking to all the other mums and they were like breastfeeding and stuff in the kitchen? It's like the late night chats. I'm literally in tears every time I watch it. I'm like, pull yourself together, Mikaela. It's so cute. It's really
That
cute.
is, and that's so nice that
Yeah.
our parents missed out on that. What did they do? Like just call each other at 1 a.m.
Yeah. Can you imagine ringing a landline at whatever time in the morning?
Oh, no, I love that. And it comes down to that open conversation piece because I kind of want to talk about then is that's what
Mhm.
a lot of your mission behind your business is like, let's just talk about this. Let's be open. Let's
Yeah.
talk about this.
Yeah.
Let's do all of this. How do you, like, what advice would you to have to women sat here being like, I love listening to this. I really want to be more open and be more like
Yeah.
Mikaela, not like Caroline, because she's still, it's like clearly slightly more
No,
uncomfortable than
not
Mikaela.
at all, not at all. No, it is. You know, it is hard, and it is like I think it is quite like a bit of a funky conversation, or it can be. So I think podcasts actually a really interesting way of doing it. I think if you're trying to like open up more with a partner versus friends, and you're finding it a bit tricky, I think listening to stuff like this or like Dr. Emily Morse, she has a podcast called Sex with Emily. That is my favorite. You should listen to that. It's a great one to listen to with partners because you can be driving in the car and go, oh, hey, what do you think about this? Or, I was listening to this podcast the other day and we talked about this. How do you feel? And kind of trying to ask open questions. I think with it, it's important to think about almost how you have those conversations and if you're in the right frame of mind. So I guess you don't want to be like if someone's in a stressful period at the end of the day or the kids are running around. I think you need to be able to engage with each other and communicate and make that time and just talk in a way that is open and like curious, but as opposed to try to not let anything come across like judgy. Because I think obviously everyone's got different needs and wants and desires and boundaries. And I think that like that's the beauty of life, right? Is that we're all different. So I think having those conversations to try and figure out things that you like and things your partner might like or things you could try together is a nice little way. And then with friends, I guarantee you get a glass of wine in any of them. And I think we're all feeling the same. Everyone's experiencing the same things. Like, so I think it's just once that like wall kind of comes down a little bit, I think it's okay. I think like I make a joke out of it as well because it doesn't need to be like really serious and you can choose like what you share,
Yeah.
and that's why I said stuff like the podcasts are kind of I guess it removes you like you can be like, oh, I heard Mikaela talking about this was a great vibrator for new mums and you're not saying, I have this vibrator at
I've
home. Do
tried
you know
it.
what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay, I can confirm it is excellent. But you know what I mean? You can almost like remove, you can like almost use other authorities in the space, I guess, to open up the conversation if that helps. And the car is always good. I always find that if you're like nervous about looking someone in the eye, that's like I feel like that's good advice for any chats, isn't it? Like mental
Oh my
health, all
gosh,
that type
they
of
say
stuff.
that about parenting. It's like when you're
Yeah,
walking along together or like, yeah, in the car, that's where
yeah,
people will just open up to you. So that's
yeah,
such good advice. Listening to a podcast,
yeah.
even one like this, which is obviously our listeners,
Hmm.
our mothers. Hello to any
Yeah.
men listening. Love you to listen to. But
Oh, yes,
you
love
know, we're
that.
not being anti-men on here. We are saying how
No.
it works is a very traditional masculine way and owned by men, and it's not serving either men or women. And we're just
Yeah,
trying.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's not, it's, and like I said, just back to that stat around like if 80, only 18% of vulva owners are orgasming from penetration, it's like we've all got work to do. And that's everyone, like men, women,
I
sex toy
think
company
there'd be
owners,
so
all of
many
us.
partners that would be mortified if they thought that was.
Yeah.
You
Because they
wouldn't
are,
you
I
want
just see their little faces when they realize how many women are faking orgasms with them.
their little face.
I know because they do try hard, but you know,
And I
we can
think
always do better. We do what we know, don't we, until we do better, and then that's what's great.
and I think it's good advice, like you said, to talk to your friends about it, or even just one
Yeah.
like, thing. Because I think that's probably what was missing, when we're all in our 90s and 20,
Yeah, yeah, like the
20
little
that
WhatsApp handler.
time. And that was probably it, because we're like, oh, can we talk about this? Or just too
Yeah,
busy not talking about it, basically.
yeah. But I just think we're all kind of like I said, there's such that heavy levels of shame, and I think we all feel like somebody might judge us. But honestly, I guarantee we're all feeling the same. I think we're all kind of in that cycle where I do think that particularly vulva owners, we do this thing where we like beat ourselves up because we think, oh God, they're not gonna love us anymore if we don't. But it needs to like it's still got to be pleasurable for you, which is why it's like it's only gonna you kind of make it worse once you get on that downward spiral because it becomes like a really pressured thing. I think my one advice on that would always be like try and take the like P&V or whatever it is that you're worried about. It might not be that you might be like your partner might always want to, I don't know, go down on you, and you might be like, actually, that's not my favorite. I just really would like a massage. I think like trying to say that like, hey, tonight, do you mind if we just take it slow and just, I don't know, have a little massage session, or even like, can you just relax and I'll just give you a back massage tonight, and then we can both go to sleep. But because the thing is, those little things like that, you might find it might lead on to more because your desire will kick in more, but you've communicated from the outset and then you're not putting that pressure on yourself to like feel like you've got to yeah yeah,
Yeah.
which is
Oh.
ultimately what none of us want to be doing.
Right. And that is why we're releasing this podcast before the school holiday. So everyone remembers that their pleasure is important amongst the chaos of everything.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's hot nights, you want to get your clothes off, have a little cuddle. You don't need to do any other touching involved, but just even that like physical
That's
touch,
true.
like level of intimacy is a lovely little tip, although maybe it's too hot for that. Get a fan on you.
Put a fan on direct.
Fan on, little naked cuddle with fan.
Michaela, it's been such a great chat. And your business is in its first year, about to turn one this summer. So also really well timed podcast. What are your goals and plans? Can you share anything exciting coming?
Oh my God. I feel like just more, bigger, better, all the things when you're a business owner. I've got some really exciting new brands coming on board. One that I'm about to launch is called The Own Collective, which I love because it's created by four friends that met while they were working together in Asia. And then just like they all changed industry. I think they're working for Nike. But they all kind of changed industry and have made this it's just an amazing brand that is just so, it's just super modern attitudes towards sex. It's just it's great for everybody, really. So more brands coming, bring
Amazing.
some experts on board. I really want to continue to empower people and bring amazing education and just help, I think, everyone with the confidence to be able to have better conversations. I think the communication aspect of sex is so important, and it's one that I think it is difficult. I think even in long-term relationships, it can be difficult. Some people are much better at it than others, and that's okay. So yeah, trying to bring maybe a couple of like resources and things that can help people with that. But yeah, just trying to I don't know what else. Another good one. A good one is trying to get through everyone's rules. So try and get through Meta and Google's
Oh,
little advertising
that's a
policies
good
so we can
goal.
try.
Actually,
It'll be
market my
great.
amazing
More, yeah,
business that will
yeah,
help
more
people.
traffic to the website is perfect. Because thing. I feel like our conversion rate is strong, but like every time someone orders something, I'm like, how have you even found me? By what magic have you scrolled past like page 10 on Google, you know? But we've got some products that are like higher up there. So more of that really trying to work out the ways around it. 'Cause it's a challenging industry for advertising. I kind of can't, I guess, straight just shove a load of money into Facebook ads and expect miracles. So we got to get a bit creative. So if
Yeah.
anyone's got any ideas, hit
I
me
love
up.
that. There's a job out there for some freelancer to find the trick for all sex businesses, basically.
Absolutely. Oh God, if somebody could like nail that, I think,
Could be
we'd all
rich.
pay big money. So yeah, definitely. I actually have reached out to people like certain companies to try and help, and they're literally like, no, sorry.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
I know it's hard though, because I guess they don't want to promise certain things if they can't deliver, I guess. So I
Yeah, I
respect
get
that, but
it.
it's hard, yeah.
Better than just taking your
We'll get
money out, yeah. Well, you'll get there.
That's it. Yes. I respect that integrity. I like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so just more of the same, really, bigger, better, keep it going. Like you said, it's only been the first year and it's been mad. So I'm so excited for what we can do and yeah, hopefully help more people, more couples, more
More
individuals, just everyone.
podcasts, get people
Yeah,
talking.
more podcasts. I do love it. I love having a little chat.
Yeah.
But I just want people to like feel great pleasure and like just feel happy in themselves. And I think like once you're in that cycle, it's super uplifting. I think it's so easy to kind of go the other way. I mean, and don't be downbeat on yourself as well if that's you right now. It's all within your control, you know. You don't even need a toy from me. You've got your hands. It's
Yeah.
magic. But
I know it.
if
The
you do need
best
toys, you know what
your phone anyway. You don't really need us.
you don't really need us, but you know what you do need? Oh, one more thing. Lube. Can we do a little shout
Oh,
out for
there we go.
lube? Get
And
some
go
lube
buy it
in.
from. Where can they buy it from?
Come by it from pleasuregap.co.uk.
There we go.
That's
I'm
me.
so into finding people. You have been the
But
best
yeah, lube.
saleswoman ever. You really have to, but you have to. That's the
I do forget about that, but that's the problem because I'm like, I just feel so strongly about everyone feeling great things. And I'm like, oh yeah, I've got to sell stuff now. But yes, lube always. That is it as well. Communication and lube. That's like the number one thing that you're gonna need.
Have you got ever, like, if you were doing a top three tips, we've got communication, lube, and
Communication, lube, and oh,
fun?
yeah, I think, do you know what? Yeah, you're right. Like, go easy on yourself, relax. So, like, it doesn't need to be, it just doesn't need to be perfect. It shouldn't be perfect. That's boring. Like, it needs to
Oh,
be like, try new things, make it fun, make it messy, enjoy yourself, and make time for yourself. Definitely. I think, like, it's so important to connect with your body in that way. So then you can, if you wanted a partner to be involved, you can, tell them what feels great for you. And then that is only going to skyrocket everything.
I love that. Oh, Mikaela, thank you. And where
Yeah.
else can people find you? Not just your website, this Instagram.
Yeah.
Where...
Instagram, yeah, pleasuregap_HQ. There's a few bits on YouTube. Yeah, they're probably the main bad boys.
Oh,
TikTok as well, all the things. I
I'll
sound like
say, are
such
you
a
banned
granny.
from TikTok
The
yet?
channels, yeah, basically all the standard social media routes.
Wonderful.
My
Well,
my ex Twitter/X is ropey, but we'll try harder. That can be a goal for this year.
well, you might not need to. No one's trying that anymore.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, no, honestly, thank you so much. I'm all about people making time for themselves, finding their identity and their pleasure. So, and you're perfectly in line with that on the podcast. So, it's been a pleasure to end this season with you, Mikaela. Thank you so much for being.
Thank you, Caroline. You've been amazing. I've loved this chat. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to Bump to Business Owner. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Please do rate, review, follow, or subscribe wherever you're listening. It really helps us to connect with more mums and business owners. You can DM me on @BumpToBusinessOwner on Instagram, and I'll be back next week.